Sir, I'm going to say this one more time and then I'm calling security. The woman in the pearl gray blazer held the check between two fingers the way a person holds something they found under a car seat. $5 million. Real paper. Real ink. Real signature. She tore it in half. Then she tore it again. And again. 4 pieces became 8, and 8 became a small white snowfall that she brushed off the edge of her desk into a wastebasket she didn't even look at. The man in front of her didn't raise his voice. He didn't move. He just looked at the wastebasket and then at his 9-year-old daughter sitting in the chair beside him with her backpack still buckled across her chest. And he said quietly, "That's fine. There's another one." 11 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up outside the branch. An old man got out. He didn't look at the manager. He didn't look at the assistant manager who was already halfway across the lobby with his hand out. He walked straight past both of them, stopped in front of the man in the work jacket, and said 4 words that emptied the color out of every face in that building. "Welcome, sir. You're late." This is the story of Nathan Brenner. And what happened in the 90 minutes before that sedan pulled up is the reason 2 careers ended before dinner. Nathan Brenner owned 3 jackets. 1 for church, 1 for winter. And the one he was wearing that Thursday morning canvas the color of wet sand, worn pale at the elbows with a small burn hole on the left cuff, where a spark had landed 9 years ago, and he'd never gotten around to patching it. He was 41 years old. He had rough hands, a machinist's hands with 2 fingernails that had grown back wrong, and a scar across the base of his thumb from a lathe that got away from him in 2013. He drove a 2009 pickup with a cracked taillight and a car seat in the back. He'd never taken out even though Josie had outgrown it 3 years ago. He looked like a man who fixed things for a living. He was a man who fixed things for a living. That morning, he got up at 4:40 the way he had every morning for 11 years, and he stood in the kitchen in the dark and looked at the calendar on the refrigerator door. March 14th was circled in blue pen. Anna's handwriting. She'd circled it herself 4 years ago, back when they still believed in calendars. "My birthday. You owe me a cake," she'd written in the little square. She'd drawn a slice of cake next to it badly because Anna Brenner could rebuild a carburetor blindfolded, but could not draw a cake to save her life. Nathan had never taken the page down. Every month he flipped the calendar forward and then flipped it back so March stayed on top. 4 years of a kitchen that thought it was March. "Dad." Josie was in the doorway in her school clothes, hair half-braided, backpack already on. 9 years old and organized like an air traffic controller. "You're doing the thing again," she said. "What thing?" "The staring at the fridge thing." "I'm planning," Nathan said. "You're staring." "Planning looks like staring. It's very technical." He picked up his coffee. "Go finish your braid." "I can't reach the back." He sat her on the counter and did it himself the way Anna had taught him in a hospital room with a mirror propped on a food tray because she'd known she was running out of days, and she'd decided the most useful thing she could leave behind was a man who could braid hair. He'd been terrible at it. He was still terrible at it. But he was terrible at it reliably, which is most of what a kid needs. "Is today the day?" Josie asked. "Today's the day. The bank day. The bank day." She thought about it. "Do I have to be quiet?" "You have to be bored," Nathan said. "It's a bank. Being bored is the whole activity." Here is what nobody in that branch knew when Nathan Brenner walked through the door at 1:52 in the afternoon. Anna Brenner died of a thing called restrictive cardiomyopathy. The short version is that the heart gets stiff. It stops filling correctly. She spent the last 14 months of her life tethered to a monitoring rig the size of a microwave that beeped every 90 seconds and had to be recalibrated by a technician who came out twice a week and charged them for mileage. Nathan spent those 14 months in a garage. Not hiding. Working. He was a machinist and a fabricator, and he had spent his entire adult life looking at a badly designed thing and thinking, why is it like that? So he looked at the microwave-sized box that beeped at his wife every 90 seconds, and he thought, why is it like that? It took him 6 years, 2 failed prototypes, a second mortgage, and a $12,000 loan that 7 banks turned down. The 8th bank said yes. What came out the other end was a device about the size of a deck of cards. It did the same job as the microwave. It didn't beep. It didn't need a technician. It cost about 1/9 as much to manufacture, and it worked on battery for 11 days, which meant a woman with a stiff heart could go to her daughter's school play without a rig on a rolling cart. Anna never got to use one. She'd been gone 2 years by the time the first working unit came off the bench. In January, a medical device company in Minneapolis bought the patent portfolio outright. The number after lawyers, after taxes withheld, after everything came to a check for $5 million, and no cents drawn on a corporate account, and signed by a CFO. Nathan had met exactly once. He didn't want the money. That's not a figure of speech, and it's not humility. He genuinely did not want it. He had a house that was paid off and a truck that ran, and a daughter who needed shoes twice a year. $5 million was a problem he did not have the tools for. So he did the only thing that made sense to him. He set up a foundation, the Anna Brenner Fund. It would buy the devices, his devices, and put them in the hands of families who couldn't afford the rig on the rolling cart. He wrote the charter himself and then paid an attorney to fix all the parts he'd written wrong, which was most of them. And here is the part that matters. The foundation had a matching partner. An institutional donor had agreed to match the initial funding dollar for $5 million against $5 million under one condition written into the charter in language Nathan had read 40 times. Initial principal must be seated and confirmed by the close of business on March 14th. He'd picked the date himself. $10 million or 5 or nothing at all, depending on whether a piece of paper made it through a bank door by 4 o'clock on his wife's birthday. He had it in an envelope in the inside pocket of a canvas jacket with a burn hole in the cuff. The Winslow Trust branch on Cedar Hollow Road had marble floors and a coffee station and 4 teller windows, 3 of which were open. Nathan held the door for a woman with a walker. He held it for a kid on a phone who didn't look up. He held it for a man in a suit who said thanks without slowing down. Josie went straight for the coffee station and the little bowl of wrapped mints. 1, Nathan said. 2. 1, and I'll pretend I didn't see the second one. She took 3. The greeter's desk was empty. A young woman at the second teller window. Her name tag said. Priya caught his eye and smiled an actual smile and said, "Hi there. Are you being helped?" "Not yet." "What do you need today?" "I need to make a deposit," Nathan said, "and set up a wire, and I think I need somebody who does the bigger accounts." Priya's eyebrows went up 0.5 millimeter, friendly, not skeptical. "Sure. That'd be new accounts or the branch manager. Let me see who's free." She picked up a phone. And that is the exact moment Diane Halloway came out of her office. Diane Halloway had run the Cedar Hollow branch for 6 years. She was good at parts of the job. She was genuinely good at parts of it. Her audit numbers were clean. Her staff turnover was low mostly. She could talk a retiree through a beneficiary form with real patience, and twice a year she was patient enough that somebody wrote a letter about her to corporate, and she kept those letters in a drawer. But Diane Halloway had a habit, and it was the kind of habit that never shows up in an audit. She sorted people. She did it in about 1.5 seconds at the door before anyone spoke. It was automatic by now, the way a cashier reads a bill without thinking. Shoes, watch, posture, haircut, the sound of the vowels. She'd have told you it was efficiency. She'd have told you a branch manager has finite time and has to allocate it. What it actually was, she'd decided a long time ago that money looks like something. And she had never once been forced to find out how wrong that was. She looked at Nathan Brenner and she sorted him in 1.5 seconds. Canvas jacket, boots with actual wear on the toe. A kid with a backpack on a school day at 2 in the afternoon, which meant either a half day or a problem. No wedding ring, she checked, she always checked. Hands like sandpaper. Overdraft, she thought. Or a hardship letter. Or he's here to argue about a fee. "I can take this one," she said to Priya in the voice of someone doing a favor. Priya hesitated. "He said he needs, I've got it. Diane Halloway, branch manager." She didn't offer a hand. She gestured at the 2 chairs in front of her desk, and she did it with 2 fingers, the way you'd wave a car into a parking spot. "Nathan Brenner. And this is my daughter, Josie." "Hi," said Josie. Diane gave her a 2-second smile and turned back to Nathan. "So, what are we dealing with today, Mr. Brenner?" She was already typing, not looking at him. "If it's a fee reversal, I'll tell you up front we can do 1 courtesy reversal per 12 months and I'd have to see. It's not a fee." "Okay," still typing. "I have a check to deposit," Nathan said, "and then I need to move funds to a foundation account and there's a deadline on it, so I'd rather start early than late." Diane's typing slowed. A foundation account. Yes, ma'am. Here at this branch? The account was opened at the corporate office in January. I've got the paperwork. He unzipped the canvas jacket, reached into the inside pocket, and took out a plain white envelope folded once down the middle. Diane looked at the envelope. That's what did it, people said later. Not the jacket, not the boots. The envelope. Folded in half. Carried in a coat pocket like a grocery list. Okay, she said. And now there was something new underneath the word. A thin layer of amusement. Let's see what we've got. He handed it across. She opened it with her thumbnail. She unfolded the check, and Diane Holloway's face did a thing that Josie Brenner would describe later at the kitchen table with total accuracy. She looked like somebody handed her a snake. $5 million and no cents. Corporate account. Minneapolis. A CFO's signature and inkjet security band. A watermark you could hold to the light. And across the desk, a man in a canvas jacket with a burn hole in the cuff. Diane laughed. It was short, and it came out before she could stop at one syllable, and she covered it fast with a hand and a small professional cough. But Nathan heard it, and Josie heard it, and Priya at the second window heard it. I'm sorry, Diane said. I'm sorry. That was okay. Mr. Brenner. She set the check down flat and squared it with her fingertips like a card dealer. Can I ask where you got this? I sold a patent. You sold a patent. Portfolio of 4, Nathan said. Cardiac monitoring. Closed in January. She was nodding in a rhythm that had nothing to do with agreement. And you've been carrying it around since January. I've been waiting for today. There's a date requirement on the receiving side. Right. Diane picked the check up again, held it at an angle to the window light, and made a small hum sound in the back of her throat. Because normally, and I don't want to insult you, I'm just telling you how this works. Normally, an instrument of this size doesn't come in through a branch. It doesn't come in a jacket. It comes in as a wire arranged 3 weeks out with counsel on both ends and a phone call from the issuing institution. I know, Nathan said. That's what I asked for in January. Your corporate office told me a branch deposit was fine as long as I came in person with ID because there was a note on the account. Diane's chin came up. A note on the account. That's the word they used. There's no note, she said. She hadn't looked. That's the part that gets people when this story gets told. She said there's no note with the confidence of a woman reading a screen, and she had not looked at the screen. Her eyes had not moved. She said it because a man in a canvas jacket had said the word note, and canvas jackets do not have notes. Could you check? Nathan said. Not sharp, just level. Please. Mr. Brenner, I am the check. She asked for his ID, and she took her time with it. Driver's license. She held it next to the check. She held it up to the light. She turned it over and looked at the back, which nobody has ever done for a legitimate reason in the history of banking. Nathan Brenner, she read out. Yes, ma'am. And the address here is Route 9 out past the quarry. That's right. That's a... She caught the end of that sentence and swapped it for another one badly. That's a rural route. It is. Josie from the chair said, Why did you say it like that? Diane looked at her. Nathan put a hand on his daughter's arm. Josie. But she said it like a... Josie. Josie sat back. She unwrapped one of her 3 mints with a lot of crinkling, and she looked at Diane Holloway the entire time she did it, which was somehow worse than anything she could have said. Diane set the license down. I'm going to be direct with you, she said, because I think that's more respectful than dancing around it. This check is not something I can take at the counter. Instruments in this range get flagged. They get reviewed, and frankly... She tapped the paper twice with one fingernail. Tick, tick. A lot of the ones that come in like this aren't real. It's real. They always are. She smiled. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm telling you what my job is. My job is that the last 3 times somebody brought me paper like this one was a lottery scam. One was an overpayment scam out of a car sale, and one was a very nice retired gentleman who'd been talking to somebody on the internet for 8 months. I understand. Do you... She was warming up now. She'd found the version of the conversation where she was the good guy. Because people come in so certain, Mr. Brenner. And what I have to do sometimes is be the one person in the room who's willing to say the hard thing. Nathan looked at her for a second. The hard thing, he said, would be checking the account note. The temperature at that desk dropped about 10 degrees. It was 2:14. Diane made a call. She made it on speaker, which Nathan understood immediately was not for his benefit, it was for the lobby's. It was so that the two customers at the counter and the teller at window 2 would hear a branch manager doing her diligence. She called check verification at the issuing bank in Minneapolis. She got a hold cue. 4 minutes of hold music. 6. 9. At minute 11, she pressed the button and said brightly, "Well, that's a fun system," and hung up. "I can call the CFO's office directly," Nathan said. "I've got the number." "You've got the number?" "I've got his cell, actually. He gave it to me at closing." Diane's mouth twitched. "Mr. Brenner, do you understand how that sounds?" "I understand how it sounds," he said. "It's also true. Everybody's got the CEO's cell phone number," Diane said to the room more than to him. That's practically the whole playbook. Call this number, they'll confirm it. Sir, the number is the scam." And Nathan Brenner for the first time said something with an edge on it. "You've decided what I am." "I've decided nothing." "You decided at the door," he said. "I watched you do it." At 2:31 she moved him to the lobby. She framed it as a courtesy. "Let's get you comfortable while I run this up the chain. There's coffee, there's a water cooler." What it actually was, she needed her desk for a couple that had just come in, a couple in golf clothes, and she stood up to greet them with a hand extended and a first-name greeting and a laugh about somebody's swing. Nathan sat in a lobby chair with his daughter. He did not argue. He did not make a scene. He took out his phone, checked the time, and did math. 90 minutes. "Dad?" Josie was swinging her feet. "Are we in trouble?" "No." "Is she in trouble?" "Nobody's in trouble, Joe." "Because she was being rude," Josie said. "Like actually rude. Not like Mrs. Ferrante rude." Mrs. Ferrante was her 4th grade teacher whose rudeness was legendary and consisted entirely of assigning homework on Fridays. Nathan thought about how to answer that. Here's what he wanted to say. Yes. She was rude. She was rude in a specific way that has happened to your father in one form or another since he was 19 years old and walked into a bank in these same boots asking for $12,000. And it has happened enough times that I have stopped being surprised and started being tired. Here's what he said. People decide fast sometimes, and then they spend a lot of energy defending the fast decision instead of just making a new one. Josie considered this. "That's dumb," she said. "It's very dumb," Nathan agreed. Priya Raman came over at 2:40 with 2 cups of water she hadn't been asked for. "I'm sorry about the wait," she said. "Not your fault." "I know." She glanced back toward the desk. "Mr. Brenner, can I ask, did you say there was an account note? That's what corporate told me in January." Priya's face did something careful. "There's a memo," she said quietly. "In the branch inbox. Monday. It had a subject line about a private client visit this week, and I didn't open it because it wasn't addressed to tellers. It went to management distribution." Nathan didn't react. "I could ask her to check it," Priya said. "Would that go well for you?" Priya was quiet for a second. She was 24 years old and 11 months into a job she needed. "No," she said honestly. "Then don't," Nathan said. "It's not your fight." But she looked at him for a second longer than she needed to, and something got filed away behind her eyes, and that mattered later. At 2:52, Diane called him back to the desk. Kyle Prescott was standing next to her now. Assistant manager. 29 good suit, slightly too much cologne, and the specific hungry attentiveness of a man who has been told he's on the list for a branch of his own and thinks the way to get one is to agree loudly. "Mr. Brenner, this is Kyle, my assistant manager. I've brought him up to speed." "Sir," Kyle said, and the "sir" had a little sandpaper in it. "So," Diane laced her fingers. "Here's where we are. I can't verify the instrument through the issuer's line. Your ID checks out, that's not the issue. The issue is that I have a $5 million instrument presented at a branch counter with no advance arrangement by a walk-in. There was an advance arrangement. I have no record of one." "You haven't looked." Kyle stepped in half a step like a man breaking up something. "Sir, let's keep it civil." Nathan turned his head and looked at him. "I've raised my voice 0 times, he said. "You want to tell me what part of that was uncivil?" Kyle's mouth opened and then shut. What I can do, Diane went on, is take it on a collection basis. I hold the instrument, we send it out. It clears or it doesn't, and in 9 to 14 business days you'll know. That doesn't work. That's the process. The receiving side has a deadline of 4 o'clock today, Nathan said. It's in the charter. If the principal isn't seated by close of business, the matching commitment lapses and the fund starts at half. Then you should have come in 3 weeks ago. I did, Nathan said. I came in on the 21st of February. I sat in that chair and I talked to a man named Ellis about exactly this, and he made the note. Diane blinked. Ellis Watanabe had covered the branch for 2 weeks in February while she was in Scottsdale. For 1 second there was a crack in her face, a place where a different version of the afternoon could have started, and then she closed it. Because to open it, she would have had to be wrong in front of Kyle and in front of Priya and in front of the golf couple and in front of a 9-year-old eating mince. There's no note, she said again. At 3:04, Nathan Brenner made his last reasonable request of the day. Then let me talk to someone above you. Diane's head tilted about 4 degrees. Excuse me? Regional, he said. District, whoever your escalation is. I'm not asking you to approve anything. I'm asking you to hand the decision to someone with more authority than you have, which is a completely normal thing to do at 3 in the afternoon on a deadline. I have full authority at this branch. Then use it to make a phone call. Kyle laughed through his nose. That laugh, that little exhale, is the hinge of this entire story. Because Diane heard it, and Diane understood it, and what she understood was that her assistant manager was watching to see whether she could be moved by a man in a canvas jacket. She could not be moved. She would demonstrate that she could not be moved. Mr. Brenner. She picked up the check. She held it up between 2 fingers at eye level, the way a person holds something they found under a car seat. Do you know what this is? $5 million. It's paper, Diane said. That's all it is until an institution says otherwise. And no institution is going to say otherwise on a Thursday afternoon, because a walk-in has a story about a patent and a deadline and a note nobody wrote. Ma'am, I'm going to do you a kindness, she said. I'm going to end this. And she tore it. The sound of a check tearing is not dramatic. That's the thing people get wrong when they imagine it. It's a small, dry, almost polite sound like a page coming out of a notebook. She tore it in half. She put the halves together and tore them again. 4 pieces. 8. Priya Raman actually said "oh" out loud from window 2, 1 syllable hand halfway to her mouth. The golf couple at the standing counter stopped talking. Diane brushed the pieces off the edge of the desk into the wastebasket, and she didn't look at the wastebasket while she did it, and that detail she didn't look is the one that came up in every interview afterward. There, she said. Now nobody's a victim of anything. The lobby was completely silent. Nathan Brenner looked at the wastebasket. Then he looked at his daughter, who had gone very still in her chair with a mint halfway unwrapped, and who was looking at him, not at Diane, at him, with the expression kids get when they're waiting to find out how bad a thing is by watching a grown-up's face. So he made his face calm, deliberately. He felt it happen the way you feel yourself steadying a load. That's fine, he said. There's another one. Diane's eyes narrowed. What? Certified duplicate, Nathan said. The issuer cut 2. Standard practice on an instrument that size. The second one is in a safe deposit box in Minneapolis, and it can be released by phone. He looked at the wall clock. But that takes about 40 minutes and I have 56. Kyle Prescott's face changed first. Not Diane's. Kyle's. Because Kyle Prescott had spent 4 years in operations before he moved to the branch side, and Kyle Prescott knew with a coldness that arrived in his stomach all at once that a certified check is a negotiable instrument, and that a bank officer does not get to destroy a customer's negotiable instrument, and that there were 3 cameras in the lobby with overlapping coverage of that desk. Diane, he said. Not now. Diane. Not now, Kyle. Nathan stood up. He put his hand out for Josie's backpack, and he said in a voice that carried about 8 feet and no farther, I want the pieces. Diane blinked. What? The pieces of my check. Out of the trash. I'd like them. He held out his hand. You don't have to accept the instrument. You do have to give it back to me. It's mine, Nathan said. You never took it into collection. You never gave me a receipt. There's no deposit ticket. It's my property and it's in your garbage can, and I'm asking for it back in front of 11 people. Nobody had counted the people, but everybody in that lobby looked around right then and counted. The golf couple. Priya. 2 tellers. A man at the standing desk with a deposit slip he'd stopped writing on. A woman with a walker sitting by the window. A young guy on his phone who had at some point in the last 90 seconds stopped scrolling and turned the phone sideways. 11. Diane Holloway looked at all of them, and she did the thing that people do at the exact moment they should stop. She doubled. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I think we're done here." And she picked up the phone and called security. Ray Delgado had worked contract security at the Cedar Hollow branch for 9 years. He was 56. He had a bad left knee from a fall off a loading dock in another life, and a son at community college and a policy his own, not the company's, about not putting hands on anybody unless somebody was in danger. He came out of the back hallway with his radio in his hand and stopped 4 feet short. "Ray," Diane said, "this gentleman is finished with his business and needs to be escorted out." Ray looked at the gentleman. Canvas jacket, kid with a backpack, both of them standing calmly next to 2 chairs, hands visible, nobody yelling. "What did he do?" "Excuse me?" "I said, what did he do?" Ray's voice was easy, almost friendly. "I gotta write it up, so what am I writing?" "He's being disruptive. He's standing there." "Ray," Diane's voice went thin, "I'm asking you to do your job." "Ma'am, my job is written down," Ray said. "It says I remove people who present a threat to persons or property, or people who refuse to leave after being asked by an officer of the bank." He turned to Nathan. "Sir, has anybody asked you to leave the premises?" "Not in those words," Nathan said. "Then I'm asking now, and I'm asking nice, because that's the order it goes in." Ray's face was apologetic in a way that was not weak. "Sir, would you mind stepping outside with me for a minute?" And Nathan Brenner, who could have refused, who had every reason to refuse, who had a wastebasket full of $5 million 10 feet away, said sure. He picked up Josie's backpack. "But before I do," he said, "I want everyone here to hear me say one sentence, and then I'll go outside and wait, and I won't say another word." "You don't get to make speeches in my branch," Diane said. "It's one sentence." The woman with the walker from over by the window said clearly, "Let him say it." Diane's mouth closed. Nathan looked at the wall clock. 3:19. "On February 21st, he said, a man named Ellis Watanabe sat at that desk and put a note on my account because I came in early like a person's supposed to. That note is in your system, and there's a memo in your management inbox from Monday, and neither one has been opened today. That's all. I'll be outside." He put his hand on his daughter's shoulder and walked toward the door. Ray Delgado held it open for him. And as they went through, Ray said something under his breath. 5 words that Josie Brenner remembered for the rest of her life, because it was the first time she'd ever heard an adult apologize for a building. "For what it's worth, sorry." Here is what happened inside during the 4 minutes they stood on the sidewalk. Kyle Prescott went to his workstation. He did not go to his workstation to help. Let's be honest about Kyle. Kyle went to his workstation because a horrible thought had arrived and would not leave, and the thought was, if this goes bad, I need to have looked. He opened the branch management inbox. Monday, 8:04 a.m. Subject line: Private Client Cedar Hollow Week of March 11th. Principal visit. Sender the office of the chairman. Kyle opened it. He read 4 lines and stopped breathing in a very specific way. Then he opened the account. And there on the Notes tab dated February 21st, initialed EW, was a single line of text that had been sitting in that system for 22 days. Client will present certified instrument on March 14th. Pre-cleared reference chairman's office. Do not delay. Escalate to regional immediately if any question arises. Kyle Prescott sat back in his chair. "Diane," he said. She was on the phone with regional, not about the check. About Ray Delgado and insubordination and how she wanted him off the schedule. "Diane. I'm on with Marissa." "Diane." Kyle's voice cracked. "Get off the phone." At 3:26, a black sedan pulled into the Cedar Hollow lot. It was not a limousine. That's the first thing everybody noticed and nobody expected. It was a 10-year-old sedan, clean, unremarkable, with a small dent in the rear quarter panel that had never been fixed, because the owner didn't consider dents to be information about anybody. The driver got out and opened the back door, An old man stepped onto the pavement. He was 81. He wore a gray coat, no tie, and he moved slowly on the left side the way a man moves after a hip. He carried nothing. No briefcase, no phone in his hand. He stopped when he saw the man in the canvas jacket standing on the sidewalk with a kid and a backpack. "Oh," he said. "Oh no." Inside, Kyle Prescott had gotten Diane off the phone and had turned his monitor toward her, and Diane Holloway was reading a memo from the office of the chairman with the specific stillness of a person whose ears have started ringing. Through the glass, she saw the sedan. She saw the old man on the sidewalk. And Diane Holloway, this is documented, this is on camera, pushed past her assistant manager, crossed the lobby at a speed that is not appropriate for marble floors, and pulled open the front door with a smile that was already the wrong size for her face. "Mr. Winslow," she said. "Sir, we weren't expecting you until—" Arthur Winslow did not look at her. He walked past her, past Kyle, who had come out behind her with his hand already extended and nothing to put in it. He walked slowly with the hitch in the left hip until he stood in front of Nathan Brenner. And then he did something nobody in that parking lot ever forgot. He took off his hat. "Welcome, sir," Arthur Winslow said. "You're late. I've been waiting on you since 1. Nathan said, "I've been here since 10 of 2, Mr. Winslow." Arthur went very quiet. "Say that again." "I've been here since 10 of 2. The old man turned around. He looked at his branch manager and his assistant manager and the glass door standing open behind them and the 11 people inside who had all come to the windows. "It's 28 minutes past 3, Arthur Winslow said. Nobody answered him. 94 minutes. He said the number slowly like he was tasting something spoiled. "What in God's name have you been doing for 94 minutes? Diane's voice came out at half volume. "Sir, we had a verification issue on an instrument and I was following protocol on a walk-in." "A walk-in?" "Yes, sir." "Do you know who this man is?" And Diane Holloway said the only honest thing she said all afternoon. "No, sir." Arthur Winslow turned back to Nathan. And when he spoke again, he spoke to the whole sidewalk because Arthur had been telling this story for 6 years to anybody who'd sit still, and he was not about to stop now. 19 years ago, he said, a kid came into my 6th Street branch with grease under his fingernails and a folder of drawings and asked for $12,000. 7 banks had already said no. Every one of them had a reason, and every one of the reasons was the same reason wearing a different hat. He looked at Nathan. I was 62 years old and I was bored, and I told my underwriters I'd carry it personally if it went bad. It didn't go bad, Nathan said. No, Arthur said. It did not. He turned to Diane. In January, this man sold a patent portfolio for a device that keeps people with stiff hearts out of hospital beds. My wife had a stiff heart. 41 years I was married to Margaret, and the last 2 of them she spent tied to a machine the size of a microwave that beeped at her every 90 seconds and would not let her go to a grandchild's birthday party. Nobody moved. He didn't call me about the money, Arthur said. He called me about a foundation. He wanted to buy the devices and give them away, and he asked me if I knew anybody who'd match him. The old man's jaw worked. I said I'd match him 5 for 5, on one condition, that it be seated on the 14th of March because that was his wife's birthday, and I thought... He stopped, started again. I thought that was a hell of a thing for a man to ask for instead of a boat. He looked back at the branch. So I drove out here today personally to shake his hand in my own lobby, and I find him standing on the sidewalk. Diane Holloway said, Sir, where is the check? Silence. Diane. Arthur's voice had not risen once. Where is the check? Josie Brenner, 9 years old with a mint still in her fist, said it because nobody else would. She ripped it up and threw it in the garbage. Arthur Winslow walked into his own lobby. He walked past the desk and stopped at the wastebasket, and he looked down into it, and the whole branch watched an 81-year-old man bend at the waist with a bad hip and pick 8 pieces of paper out of a garbage can one at a time. Kyle Prescott moved to help him. Don't, Arthur said. He laid the pieces on the desk. He arranged them. Corner, edge. He took his time, and when it was whole again, a $5 million instrument in 8 pieces on a manager's blotter, he put one finger on it and looked up. Ray, he said. Where's Ray? Ray Delgado came out of the hallway. Sir? Did she ask you to remove this man? Ray glanced at Diane, then didn't. Yes, sir. And what did you do? I asked him if he'd step outside with me, Ray said, because she hadn't asked him to leave and I wasn't going to put hands on a man standing next to a kid. Arthur Winslow nodded once. You're the only person in this building who did their job today, he said. Come see me Monday. Then he sat down, in her chair, behind her desk. Kyle. Sir. Read me the note on the account. Kyle read it out loud. All of it. Client will present certified instrument on March 14th. Pre-cleared reference. Chairman's office. Do not delay. Escalate to regional immediately if any question arises. When was it entered? February 21st, sir. By who? Ellis Watanabe. 22 days, Arthur said. It has been sitting in that field for 22 days. He looked at Diane. How many times did you open it today? She didn't answer. Kyle. The audit log tells you who opened what. How many times did she open it? Kyle Prescott looked at his shoes. 0, sir. 0. Arthur let that sit. And the memo from my office. Monday morning. Subject line has the words principal visit in it in capital letters from the office of the chairman to a distribution list of 11 branch managers. Opened. Not by this branch, sir. Not by this branch. Diane Halloway said in a voice that had nothing left in it. Sir, if I could explain my reasoning. You didn't have reasoning, Arthur said. You had a feeling. You looked at a man's coat and you had a feeling, and then you spent 94 minutes building a fortress around the feeling so you wouldn't have to be the one who was wrong. He tapped the pieces of the check with one finger. And when the fortress got tight, you tore up a customer's negotiable instrument in front of 3 cameras and called security on a father and a 9-year-old girl. He stood up. Give me your key. Sir, your branch key. Off the ring. On the desk. Regional Vice President Marissa Doyle arrived at 3:51. She had been on the phone with Diane 40 minutes earlier, agreeing with her about the insubordinate security guard. She had said the words, "I'll back you on that." She walked into the lobby, saw Arthur Winslow standing at the manager's desk, and executed a full 180-degree turn of the soul in approximately 1.5 seconds. Mr. Winslow, I came the second I heard. I want you to know this is not Diane has been operating well outside of any guidance I've given her, and frankly, I've had concerns about her judgment on the private client side for some time. Nathan Brenner, standing quietly by the chairs, watched Diane Halloway's face while that sentence happened. He said later it was the worst thing he saw all day. Worse than the tearing. Because Diane had spent 6 years being loyal to a company that produced Marissa Doyle, and it took Marissa Doyle less than 4 seconds to set her on fire for warmth. Marissa, Arthur said. Stop talking. She stopped. You were on the phone with her at 3:15. Yes, sir, briefly. She had a $5 million instrument on her desk and a man in the lobby asking for escalation, and she called you about a security guard. Arthur put his hat back on, and you didn't ask her one question. At 3:58, with 2 minutes to spare, the second certified instrument was released by phone from a vault in Minneapolis and confirmed to the receiving institution. Priya Raymond keyed it. Not Kyle, not Marissa. Arthur Winslow pointed at window 2 and said, That one, the one who brought him water. And Priya Raymond, 11 months into a job she needed, seeded $5 million at 3:58 p.m., with her hands shaking so hard she had to enter the confirmation twice. The matching commitment held. The Anna Brenner Fund opened the next morning at $10 million. Diane Halloway was suspended that afternoon and terminated 11 days later after the review. The review was not really about rudeness. Rudeness doesn't end a career. What ended it was a 16-second stretch of camera footage in which a bank officer destroys a customer's negotiable instrument, and the words deliberate destruction of a certified item presented for deposit, appearing in a regulatory filing that her name is attached to forever. She is at this writing not licensed to work in banking in her state. She sells insurance now in a strip mall 8 miles from Cedar Hollow, and she is reportedly very good at it, and she has never once in 3 years driven down Cedar Hollow Road. Kyle Prescott was not fired. That surprised people. He was demoted, 2 grades moved to another branch, and given a written finding that included the phrase failed to escalate despite possessing actual knowledge. Arthur Winslow's stated reason. He looked. Late and only because he was scared, but he looked. I'd rather have a coward who checks than a confident man who doesn't. Kyle asked to send a letter to Nathan Brenner. Nathan read it and never answered it, which Kyle has said is fair. Marissa Doyle lasted 5 weeks. There was no scandal and no announcement. She was simply not on the org chart the following quarter. The reason lives in one line of Arthur Winslow's handwriting on an internal memo which somebody photographed and which circulated through that bank for a year. A leader who abandons her people the instant it's expensive will do it to me too. Ray Delgado came to see Arthur Winslow on Monday, as instructed, in a clean shirt, expecting to be told he was off the contract. He was instead offered a staff position, direct employee benefits, pension eligibility building, and running the branch conduct and escalation training for the entire bank. He said no at first. He said he was a security guard, not a teacher. Arthur said, "You're the only man in that building who asked what did he do. That's the whole curriculum." Ray took the job. 240 employees have now sat through a training module built around a question he asked on a Thursday afternoon. Priya Raman was promoted twice in 14 months. She is now a private client officer. There is a laminated card taped inside her desk drawer, and it says in her own handwriting, "Ask, don't sort." Ellis Watanabe, the man who made the note 22 days early, and who had nothing to do with any of it, received a letter of commendation and a bonus he did not understand for 3 days. Josie Brenner got to keep the third mint. She also asked her father in the truck on the way home the question that ended up on a wall. "Dad, if Mr. Winslow hadn't come, would she have won?" Nathan thought about that for most of a mile. "Yeah," he said. "Probably. That day." "That's not fair." "No." "So what do you do?" And Nathan Brenner said, "You be the guy at the door. You're not always going to have an Arthur, but somebody's always got a door." The Anna Brenner Fund placed its 400th device in September. Number 400 went to a woman in Ohio named Rosalind, 58 years old, who had missed her granddaughter's kindergarten graduation because a monitoring rig the size of a microwave could not go in a school gymnasium. She went to the first grade one. She has the photo. Nathan Brenner still owns 3 jackets. He still drives the pickup with the cracked taillight, though the taillight is fixed now because Josie said it was embarrassing. He does not have an office at the foundation. He has a bench in a shop where he still builds the first article of every revision by hand, because he says you can't design a thing for a tired person unless your own hands are tired. Arthur Winslow died in April of the following year at 82 at home. He left instructions that his funeral be small, and one other instruction that his family didn't understand until they read it twice, that the framed photograph in his study go to the Cedar Hollow branch and hang in the lobby. It's not a photograph of Arthur. It's a photograph of a loan application from 19 years ago. $12,000. Denied by 7 institutions. Approved on the 8th in blue pen in an old man's handwriting. And underneath the frame on a small brass plate is the sentence Arthur Winslow said in that parking lot, the one that ended a branch manager's career and started a security guard's. "You didn't have reasoning, you had a feeling." Every new employee at that bank walks past it on their first day. Most of them don't know the story. The ones who ask get told. Now you and I both know this one's a story. Nathan Brenner isn't real. Neither is Diane Halloway or the branch on Cedar Hollow Road or the old man who took his hat off on a sidewalk. But the 94 minutes are real. They happen every single day in bank lobbies and car dealerships and emergency rooms and front desks to people who dressed for the work they do instead of the money they have. Somebody looks at a coat or a pair of hands or a last name and makes a decision in a second and a half, and then spends the rest of the afternoon defending that second and a half instead of just checking. Because that's the real villain here. It was never the tearing. It was the 22 days that note sat in a system nobody opened. It was a manager who said there's no note without moving her eyes. It was a regional VP who agreed on the phone without asking one question. Diane Halloway didn't fail because she was cruel. She failed because she was certain, and certainty is the cheapest thing in the world to buy, and the most expensive thing on earth to be wrong about. So here's the part I actually want to ask you. Forget Arthur. Arthur's the fantasy. Arthur is the part of the story that makes it a story, the black sedan that shows up at 3:26 and makes everything right. Most days there is no sedan. Most days the only thing standing between somebody and 94 minutes of quiet humiliation is one person in the room who's willing to ask a slightly awkward question out loud. What did he do? Did anybody check the note? Can I bring you some water? So if you'd been in that lobby at the standing counter at window 2 in the chair by the window with a walker, would you have said something? Or would you have looked at your deposit slip and waited for it to be over? Be honest. Tell me in the comments. I read them. And if you've ever been on the wrong side of somebody's second and a half, if somebody ever looked at your jacket and decided what you were worth, type, I've been Nathan down below, because I promise you're going to be shocked how many people are down there with you. If this one landed, hit like so it finds the next person who needs it, and subscribe. We tell one of these every week and the next one's already written. Take care of each other out there and check the note.